The moment you admit life is absurd, you lose the ability to participate in conversations about the future like you used to. Someone asks what your 5-year plan is, and you just stare at them. Not because you don't have one, because the question itself sounds insane now, like asking what color you'll paint a house that's already on fire. The cost of seeing the absurd isn't depression, it's exile, permanent exile from the country of meaning where everyone else still lives. And you can't go back, ever, no matter how much you want to. If you're tired of pretending life makes sense when it clearly doesn't, subscribe to Raw Existence right now. We don't offer hope, we offer honesty. Like this video if you've ever felt the floor of meaning disappear beneath you. Comment below and tell me what it cost you to see the absurd. Let's talk about the price nobody warns you about. There's a specific moment when you see it. When the whole apparatus of meaning reveals itself as machinery, not deep truth, not cosmic purpose, just gears and pulleys and humans pretending the mechanical motion means something. And once you see the gears, you can't unsee them. Camus called it the confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. That's fancy language for a simple thing. You keep asking why, and the universe keeps not answering. And at some point you realize it's not that you're asking wrong, it's that there's no answer, there never was. The silence isn't mysterious, it's just silence. I'm watching the field behind my house right now, grass growing without asking why it's growing, wind blowing without needing justification for its direction. And I'm thinking about how much energy humans spend trying not to be like that grass, trying to make our growing mean something, trying to give our motion purpose. When the grass just grows and dies and doesn't require its existence to be about anything. You probably had your moment too. Maybe you were at work doing something you'd done 1,000 times and suddenly thought, why am I doing this? And the answer you'd always relied on, the answer about building toward something or providing for someone or becoming something, that answer just didn't work anymore. Sounded hollow, sounded like noise humans make to cover up the silence underneath. What did it cost you, that moment? What did you lose when the machinery showed itself? The first thing that goes is the narrative about progress, the story that says you're building towards something better, that your life is a trajectory with an arc, that you're becoming who you're meant to be. That story dies immediately when you admit the absurd. Because if life is absurd, if there's no inherent meaning or purpose, then there's nowhere to build toward, no meant to be, no better future that justifies present suffering, just now. And then another now, and then you're dead, and the nows stop happening. That's not a trajectory. That's just time passing until it doesn't. Nietzsche saw this coming. God is dead, and we have killed him, he wrote. And everyone thinks he was being dramatic. But he wasn't. He was being literal. Once you stop believing in cosmic purpose, in divine plan, in meant to be, you've killed the God that made narrative possible, and you can't resurrect him. Can't go back to believing just because not believing is uncomfortable. The second narrative that dies is the one about your life mattering in some grand sense, about leaving a legacy, making a difference, being remembered. All the things we tell ourselves to justify taking up space and resources for 70 or 80 years. But if life is absurd, then your legacy is absurd too. Your difference doesn't differ anything that matters. Your memory will fade, and then the people who remember you will die, and then eventually the species dies, and then the planet dies, and then the universe experiences heat death, and none of it mattered in any sense that the word matter can actually mean. I know someone who spent 40 years building a business, employed hundreds of people, made millions of dollars, retired proud, then sat in his big house for 6 months and realized none of it meant what he thought it meant while he was doing it. The business would be sold or shut down. The employees would move on. The money would be inherited by children who didn't earn it. And in 100 years, no one would remember his name or care about his contribution. He'd spent 40 years building a monument to absurdity. He called me once, drunk, crying. What was it for? He kept asking. And I couldn't give him an answer that would help, because the only honest answer is, it wasn't for anything. It was just what you did while you were alive. And now you're still alive, and you still have to do something. The absurdity doesn't end just because you see it. Have you felt that? The weight of your own legacy crumbling before you've even finished building it? The realization that everything you're working toward is just motion without destination? Here's what nobody tells you about admitting life is absurd. You become incomprehensible to people who still believe in meaning. Not disliked, not rejected, incomprehensible. Like you're speaking a language they used to know but have forgotten. Someone tells you about their career goals, and you can't muster the appropriate enthusiasm because you see their career as absurd motion. Someone complains about a setback, and you can't offer the standard comfort because you see the setback as neither good nor bad, just different random events in a random sequence. Someone shares their dreams, and you can't participate in the dreaming because you see dreams as elaborate ways to avoid admitting there's nothing to dream toward. And they feel it. Feel your distance. Feel your inability to pretend with them anymore. And slowly, conversation by conversation, you become the person they don't invite to things. Not because you're negative, because you're honest in a way that makes their pretending harder to maintain. Camus wrote about this, about the absurd man who sees clearly while everyone else lives in comfortable fog, and he makes it sound almost noble. The clear-eyed observer standing apart, but it's not noble, it's lonely. It's watching people you care about live in narratives you can't inhabit anymore, and knowing you can't explain why without sounding like you're attacking their lives. Your parents are the worst. They built their entire lives on narratives of progress and purpose, raised you to participate in those narratives, and when you tell them, directly or indirectly, that you see through it all, that you can't pretend anymore, they don't hear philosophy. They hear failure. They hear that you're giving up, that you're depressed, that you need help, and maybe you try to explain, try to tell them about the absurd, about Camus and Sisyphus and the confrontation with silence, and they nod politely and then ask when you're going to get a better job, when you're going to settle down, when you're going to start taking life seriously. Because to them, taking life seriously means participating in the narratives. And you can't anymore. So you must not be taking it seriously. The cost is watching people you love live in a country you've been exiled from, and knowing the exile is permanent, and knowing they'll never understand why you can't just come back. I'm sitting on my porch right now. It's the same porch that's been slowly rotting for 5 years. I should fix it. There's purpose in that, right? Maintaining your property, being responsible. But I look at the rotting wood and I think, why? It's going to rot eventually anyway. I'm going to die eventually anyway. The house will outlast me, and then someone else will own it, and then they'll die, and eventually the house will be torn down, and none of the maintenance mattered. But I'll probably fix it anyway, not because it matters, because I'm still here and still have to do something with the time. That's what Camus meant when he said we must imagine Sisyphus happy. Not happy because the rock has purpose. Happy because he's accepted the absurdity and pushed it anyway. Do your parents understand that? Does anyone? You can't unknow the absurd. This is crucial to understand. This is the cost that compounds. Once you see that life has no inherent meaning, no cosmic purpose, no divine plan, you can't go back to believing in those things. You can pretend. You can participate in the rituals, but you know you're pretending, and knowing ruins everything. Christmas used to mean something, not religiously necessarily, but as ritual, as tradition, as family gathering with implied significance. Now you sit at the table watching people perform Christmas, and you see the performance, see the manufactured meaning, see everyone agreeing to act like this particular day matters more than the day before or after, when it demonstrably doesn't, except in the collective pretending. And you can't tell them, can't ruin it for them. So you smile and participate and feel the distance between your performing and their genuine belief. And that distance is the cost, the permanent awareness that you're acting in a play where everyone else thinks it's real life. Kierkegaard wrote about this kind of awareness as despair. The specific character of despair is precisely this, he said. It is unaware of being despair. He meant that most people are in despair but don't know it, because they're still believing in the narratives. But once you become aware, once you see the despair for what it is, you can't become unaware again. That's the permanent loss, the innocence of participation, the ability to just be in moments without seeing through them. You watch a sunset, and instead of just experiencing beauty, you think about how beauty is a chemical response in a brain that evolved to find certain wavelengths of light pleasant for no reason, except that creatures who found them pleasant survived slightly better. And knowing that doesn't make the sunset less beautiful exactly, but it makes your experience of beauty self-conscious, aware of its own machinery. I knew a woman who had this happen with love. She'd been married 20 years, happy, or so she thought. Then she read something, or thought something, or experienced something that made her see love as chemical and behavioral and evolutionary, as oxytocin and bonding patterns and mate selection driven by unconscious genetic imperatives. And she couldn't unsee it, couldn't go back to experiencing her marriage as deep spiritual connection. She saw the chemicals, saw the patterns, saw the machinery. She stayed married, loved her husband as much as she could, but she knew what she was experiencing wasn't what she used to think it was. And that knowledge was a wall between her and the feeling itself. She was aware of loving, which is different from just loving, and the difference is everything. This is what admitting the absurd costs: the ability to be unconscious, to just live without watching yourself live, to participate without seeing the performance. Once you see it, you're always watching, always aware, always slightly outside your own experience. And people will tell you to live in the moment, to be present, to practice mindfulness, and you want to scream at them that you can't not be aware. That awareness is the problem, not the solution. That you'd give anything to go back to unconscious participation, but you can't, because you've seen the gears, and the gears are always visible now. The field outside doesn't have this problem. The grass doesn't watch itself grow, doesn't analyze its own existence, just grows and dies and grows again without the burden of awareness. And you envy it. Envy the grass for being grass without knowing it's grass. Can you go back? Have you tried? Does trying make it worse? Some relationships require shared delusion to function. This is hard to admit, but it's true. Most friendships are built on mutual agreement to pretend certain things matter. Careers matter, status matters, achievements matter, problems matter. And as long as both people maintain the pretense, the friendship works. But when one person admits the absurd and the other doesn't, the friendship becomes impossible. Not because of conflict, because of incomprehension. You can't share your life with someone when your life is organized around accepting meaninglessness and their life is organized around creating meaning. The gap is too wide. I lost most of my friends when I admitted the absurd. Not dramatically, not through arguments, just through slow drift. They'd share their problems, and I couldn't offer solutions because I saw their problems as absurd. They'd celebrate their victories, and I couldn't genuinely celebrate because I saw their victories as absurd. And eventually, they stopped sharing, stopped calling, stopped including me. And I understood. I'd become the person who made their pretending harder, who reminded them, just by existing, that maybe none of it meant what they needed it to mean. I was the doubt they didn't want in their lives. Romantic relationships are even harder, because romance requires believing in meaning, in soulmates, or destiny, or at least in this relationship matters more than other relationships. But if life is absurd, if there's no cosmic significance to anything, then your relationship is just two random people who happen to meet and decided to spend time together until they don't anymore. And that's fine, that's honest, but it's not romantic. I love you becomes a complicated statement when you've admitted the absurd. Does love mean something inherent? Or is it just chemicals and habits and shared history? And if it's just chemicals, does that make it less real? Or does it make everything we call real just chemistry we've decided to take seriously? I tried to explain this to someone I was dating once. Tried to tell them that I could love them while also acknowledging that love wasn't what we pretend it is. That it was biology and choice and mutual decision to continue choosing, not destiny or meant to be or soul connection. And they heard it as me saying I didn't really love them, that I was being cold or detached or afraid of commitment. But I wasn't. I was just being honest about what love actually is when you strip away the mythology. And honesty, it turns out, kills romance. Romance needs mystery, needs belief in something beyond the mechanical. And I couldn't give them that anymore because I'd seen the gears. So they left. Found someone who could still believe in the narratives. Who could say soulmate without irony. Who could talk about meant to be without seeing the absurdity. And I understood. I'd have chosen them over me too if I still believed in choosing. The cost of admitting the absurd is losing the ability to share your life with people who need meaning to function. And that's most people, which means the cost is mostly being alone. Not lonely, necessarily. Just alone. Accompanied only by others who've also seen through it and decided to live anyway. There's a specific kind of conversation that happens between people who've admitted the absurd. It's different from normal conversation. Quieter, less about content and more about acknowledgement. You see it too? Yeah. Okay. And that's enough. No need to process or analyze or create meaning from the seeing, just mutual recognition that we're both seeing and both continuing anyway. Those conversations are rare. Most of the time you're sitting in your own clarity, watching other people live in their comfortable fog, and knowing you can't join them, and they can't join you. And the gap between is the cost. I'm watching a bird right now. It's sitting on a fence post doing nothing, not building meaning, not creating purpose, just sitting, because sitting is what it's doing right now. And when it flies away, it won't mean anything, won't signify anything, won't be a metaphor for anything. It'll just be a bird that was sitting and now isn't. And I think that bird has relationships based on chemistry and proximity and evolutionary drives. And those relationships work perfectly well without meaning. The bird doesn't need its mate to be its soulmate, just needs its mate to be its mate, present, functional, there. Maybe that's enough. Maybe relationships can survive the absurd if both people agree to just be present without needing it to mean something cosmic. But I haven't found many people who can do that. Most need the meaning more than they need the presence. Have you? Have you found someone who can sit with the absurd and stay anyway? Here's the thing nobody tells you about admitting the absurd. It makes you free in a way that's absolutely terrifying. If nothing has inherent meaning, if there's no cosmic purpose, if you're not building toward anything, then you can do anything or nothing, and both are equally valid, equally meaningless, equally absurd. That freedom is paralyzing. When everything mattered, you had guidance, had reasons to choose A over B, had framework for decisions. But when nothing matters, when it's all equally absurd, what do you base choices on? Preference? Whim? Whatever hurts least in the moment? Nietzsche understood this, wrote about it constantly. The death of God, the loss of cosmic meaning. It doesn't free you to do whatever you want. It burdens you with having to create your own values in a universe that doesn't care about your values. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how, he wrote. But what if there is no why? What if the why was always just a story we told ourselves? Then you have to live without the why, have to get up every day and do things for no reason except that you're still alive and still have to do something. And that's freedom. The terrible freedom of choosing your own absurd motion in an absurd universe that doesn't care what you choose. Some people can't handle it. They see the absurd, feel the freedom, and immediately start building new narratives, new meanings, new purposes. They trade God for politics or activism or career or family and treat these new meanings like they're inherent when they know, deep down, they're not. They're just new stories, new ways to avoid the freedom, and I don't judge them. The freedom is terrible. It's easier to believe in something, even if you know it's constructed, than to live in pure absurdity. But the cost of that choice is different from the cost of admitting the absurd. It's the cost of knowingly living in bad faith, of pretending to believe what you know isn't true, and that has its own weight. I tried that for a while. After I admitted the absurd, I tried to build new meaning. Tried to tell myself that even if there's no cosmic purpose, I could create personal purpose, choose what matters to me, and act like that choice made it matter. But I couldn't maintain it, kept seeing through my own constructions, kept noticing the arbitrariness of my chosen values. Why did I decide writing matters? Why not carpentry or gardening or doing nothing at all? And the answer was always just I decided. Which is true, but it's not satisfying. Doesn't feel like enough of a foundation to build a life on. Just arbitrary choice in an arbitrary universe. So I stopped trying to build meaning and just started being. Doing things because they're what I'm doing, not because they mean something. Writing, because writing is what's happening right now, not because writing matters cosmically or personally or at all. Just because it's the motion I'm making with my hands and brain while I'm still alive. And that's freedom. Not the freedom to do what you want, the freedom from needing what you do to mean something. The freedom to just be motion in a universe of motion and not require justification or purpose or significance. But it's terrible. Most days I wake up and don't know why I'm getting out of bed. Not in the depressed sense, in the literal sense. There's no reason to get up, no purpose being served by getting up. Just the fact that I'm awake and getting up is what awake people do, and I do it. And it doesn't mean anything, and I'm free, and it's terrible. The field outside is free in the same way. The grass grows without why, the wind blows without purpose, the sun rises and sets without meaning, and it's all perfectly fine, perfectly free, perfectly absurd. And the field isn't burdened by the freedom because the field doesn't know it's free, but you know. And knowing makes the freedom weight instead of wings. Do you feel it? The terrible freedom? What do you do with it? Camus ends his essay on the absurd with Sisyphus. You know the story. Man condemned to push a boulder up a mountain forever. Gets to the top, boulder rolls down, he walks down and pushes it up again. Eternal repetition, eternal futility, eternal absurdity. And Camus says, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. That line pisses people off. They think Camus is being flip, being paradoxical for effect. How can someone be happy in eternal, meaningless repetition? How can happiness coexist with complete futility? But Camus wasn't being flip. He was being precise. Sisyphus is happy not because the boulder has purpose, not because pushing it means something, but because he's accepted the absurdity completely, has embraced it, has said yes to the eternal recurrence of meaningless motion and found freedom in that acceptance. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart, Camus wrote. Not the achieving, not the meaning, not the purpose, the struggle itself, the motion, the continuing despite knowing it's futile. That's what fills the heart. That's what makes Sisyphus happy. And I think about that a lot, about whether I've accepted the absurd the way Sisyphus has, whether I'm still fighting it, still wishing it weren't true, still trying to find meaning in a universe I know is silent, or whether I've actually embraced it, actually said yes to the absurdity and found my own boulder to push. Because that's the cost nobody warns you about. Admitting the absurd isn't the end of the process, it's the beginning. You admit it, and then you have to decide what to do with the admission. And most people get stuck there, stuck between seeing the absurd and accepting it, living in the gap where they know life is meaningless, but haven't figured out how to be okay with that yet. I know a guy who's been stuck there for 15 years. Sees the absurd clearly, talks about it constantly, quotes Camus and Nietzsche and articulates the problem perfectly. But he's miserable, bitter, angry at the universe for being absurd. Still wants it to not be true even though he knows it is. He admitted the absurd but never accepted it. And the cost of that is worse than never seeing it at all. Because now he can't participate in meaning like other people, but he also can't be free from needing meaning. He's stuck, aware of the absurdity, but not okay with it. And that's hell, actual hell. Seeing clearly and hating what you see and being unable to look away. Acceptance is different. Acceptance is what Sisyphus has. It's not happiness in the normal sense, not pleasure or contentment or satisfaction. It's something else. It's the peace that comes from completely embracing what is without needing it to be different. From pushing the boulder and not needing the pushing to matter, from living and not needing the living to have purpose. And I don't know if I've reached that. Some days I think I have. I sit on this rotting porch and watch the field and feel completely at peace with the meaninglessness. Feel free in the terrible freedom. Feel like I'm pushing my boulder, and that's enough. But other days, I'm still fighting it. Still wanting life to mean something, even though I know it doesn't. Still caught between admission and acceptance. Maybe that's normal. Maybe the gap between seeing the absurd and embracing it is where most people live. Maybe pure acceptance, Sisyphus-level acceptance, is rare. Maybe it's enough to just keep pushing even when you're not sure you're okay with the pushing. I'm watching the grass grow right now. Same grass that's grown and died and grown again every year I've lived here. Eternal recurrence, Sisyphean grass, and it doesn't seem bothered by the repetition. Doesn't seem to need the growing to mean something, just grows, and dies, and grows, and the cycle is enough. Can you be like that grass? Can you push your boulder and be okay with the pushing? Or are you still fighting the absurdity even while seeing it? There's a specific price you pay for being honest about the absurd. It's not philosophical, it's practical. Day to day, moment to moment, you lose the ability to comfort people with lies. Someone loses their job and they're devastated, and they want you to tell them it happened for a reason, that something better is coming, that this is all part of a plan, and you can't. You see their suffering and you know it's random. No, it doesn't mean anything. No, nothing better is guaranteed to come, because the universe doesn't operate on narrative logic where setbacks lead to triumphs. Sometimes you lose your job, and then you get a worse job, and then you get sick, and then you die. That's allowed, that happens. But you can't say that to someone who's suffering. Can't tell them their pain is random and meaningless. So you either lie, which costs you your integrity, or you stay silent, which costs you the relationship. Either way, you pay. And it's not just other people's suffering. It's celebration too. Someone gets married and they want you to be happy for them, to celebrate the finding of true love, the beginning of a beautiful journey together. And you see two people who are biochemically compatible deciding to legally bind themselves based on feelings that will change, because all feelings change. And you know, statistically, half of marriages end, and the other half are often people too afraid or too comfortable to leave. But you can't say that. Can't be honest about what you're actually witnessing. So you smile and congratulate and feel the distance between your performance and their genuine belief. And that distance is the cost of honesty. You can't participate fully in human rituals anymore because you see through them. And seeing through them makes you the outsider at every gathering. Funerals are the worst. Everyone needs death to mean something. Needs to believe the person is in a better place, or that they lived a full life, or that they'll be remembered, or that their death teaches us to appreciate life more. Needs some kind of redemptive frame around the brutal fact of ceasing to exist, and you stand there knowing none of it is true, knowing dead is just dead, knowing the person isn't anywhere, knowing their life wasn't full or empty, it just was, and now it isn't, knowing they'll be forgotten eventually, knowing their death doesn't teach anything except that bodies fail and existence ends. But you can't say any of that. Have to nod along with the eulogy and the comforting lies and feel completely alone in your clarity. The cost of honesty in a world built on comforting lies is isolation, is being the person who makes things harder by seeing too clearly, is having to choose between your integrity and your relationships over and over again. And most of the time, you choose relationships. Choose to lie or stay silent. Choose to let people have their comforting narratives. Because what's the alternative? Telling everyone the truth and having no one left in your life except other people who've admitted the absurd. Maybe that would be better. Maybe a small circle of honest people is worth more than a large circle of people you have to lie to, but I haven't found enough honest people to make a circle. Most people who see the absurd either retreat back into meaning, or get stuck in bitter awareness, or kill themselves. The ones who accept it and live anyway are rare and scattered, and not particularly interested in forming communities, because forming communities requires believing community matters, and we know it doesn't. So you're mostly alone, mostly navigating a world of people who need lies to function while you can't provide those lies without betraying yourself. And that's the cost. The daily grinding cost of seeing clearly in a world that runs on fog. I'm alone right now, on this porch, watching this field, and I could call someone, could reach out, could participate in human connection. But I know what that participation requires. No, I'll have to pretend, have to act like their problems matter in the way they think they matter, have to celebrate their wins like wins mean something, have to mourn their losses like loss is tragedy instead of just change. And I'm tired of pretending, tired of the performance, so I stay alone, which is its own cost, but it's a cost I'd rather pay than the cost of constant dishonesty. The field doesn't have to lie to other fields, doesn't have to pretend, just exists alongside other existing things without needing to create shared meaning. And I envy that. Envy the honesty that comes from having no capacity for language, from being unable to construct lies even if you wanted to. What do you do? Do you lie to maintain relationships, or do you tell the truth and live alone? Which cost is higher? Milan Kundera wrote about the unbearable lightness of being. The idea that if life is meaningless, if everything is arbitrary, then life becomes light, too light, unbearably light, without the weight of meaning and purpose and significance. Existence floats away, becomes insubstantial, becomes impossible to hold on to. And that's what admitting the absurd feels like. Everything becomes light. Your job doesn't matter, so showing up becomes effortless but also pointless. Your relationships don't matter, so maintaining them becomes easy but also hollow. Your achievements don't matter, so accomplishing things becomes simple but also meaningless. Everything floats, nothing has weight, and weight, it turns out, is what made things feel real. You go through your day and nothing catches, nothing sticks. You're moving through life without friction, because friction requires resistance, and resistance requires believing something matters enough to resist against. But you don't believe anything matters, so you just float, unbearably light, unbearably free, unbearably ungrounded. And people think that sounds nice. Think freedom from meaning sounds like relief. But it's not. It's vertigo. It's falling without ever hitting ground. It's being untethered in a way that makes you miss gravity, even though gravity was what held you down. I used to have weight. Used to care about things deeply. Used to feel the heaviness of responsibility and purpose and goals. And it was hard. It was heavy. But it was real. I felt connected to my life in a way I don't anymore. Felt like what I did mattered, even if only to me. Felt grounded by my own caring. Now I don't care. Not in the depressed sense, in the absurdist sense. I see that caring is arbitrary, that the things I care about are no more inherently valuable than the things I don't care about, that all caring is just chemistry and conditioning and choice, and knowing that makes the caring light, makes it float away if I'm not actively choosing to hold on to it. And choosing to care when you know caring is arbitrary, that's exhausting, that's constant effort. That's deciding every moment to weight your life with chosen significance when you know the significance isn't real. Most days I can't do it, can't generate the energy to pretend my chosen meanings matter. So I just exist, unbearably light, unbearably free. Unbearably aware that nothing I do today will matter tomorrow, and nothing I do in life will matter after I'm dead. The grass outside has weight, not because it means something, but because it's physical, rooted, connected to earth. It doesn't need significance to have substance, but I'm not grass. I'm human, and humans need meaning to feel substantial. Without it, we're just thoughts and chemistry and motion. Light. Too light, unbearably light. And the cost of admitting the absurd is living with that lightness, is waking up every day and feeling yourself float, is trying to weight your life with chosen purpose while knowing the purpose is arbitrary, is missing the gravity of genuine belief while being unable to believe genuinely anymore. Some people solve this by creating meaning anyway, by choosing values and acting like those values are inherent even while knowing they're not, by treating their chosen purpose like real purpose. And maybe that works. Maybe the performance of meaning creates enough weight to ground you even when you know you're performing. But I can't do it. Can't perform meaning convincingly enough to believe my own performance. Keep seeing through the construction. Keep noticing the arbitrariness. Keep feeling the lightness underneath whatever weight I try to create. So I float, and try to be okay with floating. Try to accept the unbearable lightness as just how things are when you've admitted the absurd. Try to imagine Sisyphus happy, even though his boulder has no weight. Even though pushing it is just motion without meaning. Even though the struggle doesn't actually fill his heart with anything except more struggle. Maybe that's enough. Maybe the struggle itself, weightless and meaningless as it is sufficient for continuing. Maybe I don't need weight to keep going. Maybe I can just keep going anyway, unbearably light, unbearably free, unbearably aware that none of it grounds me, but all of it is what I'm doing anyway. The wind is blowing right now, weightless, purposeless. Just moving air from one place to another for no reason, except that's what air does when temperature and pressure create motion. And the wind seems fine, seems unbothered by its lightness, seems content to just blow without needing the blowing to mean something. Can you be like the wind? Can you exist weightlessly and be okay with it? Or do you still need gravity to feel real? Here's what nobody tells you because it sounds insane, and maybe it is insane, but I'm going to tell you anyway. There's something you gain from admitting the absurd, something that almost makes the cost worth paying. Almost. You gain the ability to be present without needing the present to be anything other than what it is. You lose the burden of making moments significant, of needing experiences to mean something beyond experiencing them, of requiring your life to add up to some grand total. And that loss is a gain. A strange, paradoxical, unbearable gain. When you admit the absurd, sunsets stop being metaphors. They're just light refracting through atmosphere, and that's enough, more than enough. Beautiful without needing to signify anything. Just the actual physical phenomenon happening and you watching it happen. And both of you, you and the sunset, just being what you are without needing to be more. Conversations stop being about getting somewhere. Stop being goal-oriented or purpose-driven. Just become the experience of talking, of hearing another voice, of sharing space with another consciousness for a while, and that's enough too. Not building toward understanding or connection or relationship, just the talk itself, the moment itself, sufficient without needing to mean something, and suffering when it comes stops being tragic, stops being something that shouldn't happen, becomes just another experience, another thing that's occurring in this body while this body is alive. Not good, not bad, not meaningful. Just pain happening the way pain happens, and somehow that makes it more bearable, not less painful, but less heavy, less weighted with significance and why is this happening and what does this mean? I'm not saying this makes admitting the absurd worth it. I'm not saying the cost balances out. I'm just saying there are things on both sides of the ledger. Things lost and things gained. And maybe the things gained are only valuable because you've lost the ability to weight them with false significance. But there's still something. You gain honesty. Complete, unfiltered, brutal honesty with yourself. You can't lie to yourself about why you're doing things anymore because you know there's no good reason to do anything. So you do what you do and you're honest about it being arbitrary choice rather than noble purpose. And that honesty, painful as it is also freeing. You gain freedom from judgment, yours and others. If nothing matters, if it's all absurd, then you can't really fail because there's nothing to fail at. Can't really succeed because there's nothing to succeed at. Just experience your life without measuring it against some standard of what life should be. And that's freedom. Terrible freedom, but freedom nonetheless. You gain the ability to see people clearly, not as supporting characters in your narrative, not as means to your ends, not as helping or hindering your purpose, just as other conscious beings doing their own absurd thing in their own absurd way. And seeing them that clearly sometimes makes it possible to actually love them. Not for what they do for you, not for how they make you feel, just for being what they are, temporarily conscious, temporarily here, temporarily trying to make sense of the same senseless existence you're trying to make sense of, and you gain Sisyphus's smile. Maybe. If you make it to acceptance, if you stop fighting the absurd and start embracing it, if you push your boulder and find that the pushing is enough, you gain the strange peace that comes from saying yes to it all, to the meaninglessness, to the futility, to the eternal recurrence of getting up and doing things, and going to bed and getting up and doing more things until you don't anymore. That smile isn't happiness, isn't joy, isn't contentment. It's something else, something without a name, something that only exists in the gap between seeing the absurd and accepting it, between knowing nothing matters and doing it anyway, between the terrible freedom and the choice to push the boulder one more time. I don't know if I have that smile yet. Some days I feel it, feel the acceptance, feel the yes, feel like I'm pushing my boulder and it's enough. But other days I'm still bitter, still angry, still wishing the universe would answer when I ask why. Still caught between admission and acceptance, still paying the cost without fully receiving the gain. Maybe that's normal. Maybe you don't just admit the absurd once and accept it once, and then you're done. Maybe it's a daily practice, a constant re-acceptance, a boulder you push every day knowing it'll roll back down every night. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's all any of us can do. Keep pushing, keep accepting, keep saying yes, even when the yes is hard. The field outside keeps being a field. The grass keeps growing, the wind keeps blowing, and none of it gains anything from being what it is, but none of it loses anything either. It just is. And maybe that's what I'm gaining, the ability to just be, without needing the being to result in anything, without needing it to mean anything, Just being and that being enough. Is it enough for you? Have you found the gain in the loss? Or are you still just paying the cost? Not everyone can afford to admit the absurd. This is important. This isn't judgment, it's just fact. Some people need meaning to survive, need purpose to get out of bed, need to believe their life is building towards something, or they'd have no reason to continue building. And for those people, admitting the absurd isn't enlightenment, it's destruction. It's not freeing, it's annihilating. It takes away the only thing keeping them alive and offers nothing in return except terrible freedom. And they can't afford that trade. So they don't make it. Keep believing, keep participating in meaning, keep building their narratives even when cracks show. Because the alternative is worse. I've seen people break from admitting the absurd, seen them see the meaninglessness and not be able to carry it, not be able to live with the knowledge that nothing they do matters, seen them spiral into actual depression, not philosophical acceptance, seen them stop functioning, stop trying, stop wanting to be alive because being alive stopped making sense, and some of them died, killed themselves, not because they were weak, because they were honest in a situation where honesty was fatal, because they needed meaning, like they needed oxygen, and admitting the absurd cut off the supply, and they suffocated on truth. So when people tell me I'm being negative by talking about the absurd, by admitting that life has no inherent meaning, I understand where they're coming from. They're not wrong that this knowledge is dangerous, that some people can't survive it, that there's a real cost to seeing clearly, and that cost is sometimes life itself. But I can't unknow what I know, can't go back to believing just because believing keeps some people alive, can't pretend the absurd isn't real just because the reality is hard to carry. All I can do is be honest about the cost, warn people that this isn't a game, that admitting the absurd isn't intellectual exercise, that it changes everything and you can't change it back. And if you're someone who needs meaning to survive, if you know that taking away your purpose would take away your reason to live, then don't go down this path. Stay in your narratives. Keep believing. There's no shame in that. There's no nobility in destroying yourself with truth. If the lie keeps you alive, keep the lie. I mean that. Keep it. But if you're already seeing it, if the absurd is already visible and you can't unsee it, then you have to decide. You have to figure out if you can afford the cost, if you can live with knowing nothing matters and still get up every day and do things anyway, if you can push the boulder without needing it to mean something. And I don't know how you make that determination. Don't know how you know if you can afford it before you've already paid. Maybe you can't. Maybe you just pay and see if you survive. And some people survive and some don't, and it's not about strength or weakness. Just about whether you happen to be the kind of consciousness that can function without meaning or the kind that can't. I survived. Obviously. I'm here, writing this, sitting on this porch, watching this field, still alive despite admitting the absurd. But I don't know if survival is winning. Don't know if making it through the cost means you've succeeded. Maybe I'm just stubbornly continuing out of habit. Maybe actual acceptance would look different, feel different, be different. Or maybe this is it. Maybe this strange, lightweight, unbearable existence is what it looks like to afford the cost, to admit the absurd and keep going anyway, to push the boulder and not need it to mean something. To be Sisyphus and maybe, on good days, smile. The grass outside survives without meaning. The wind continues without purpose. The field exists without justification, and none of them seem bothered by it. None of them needed to afford anything to be what they are. They just are. And they're fine. Maybe humans can be like that too. Maybe some of us can. Maybe you can. Or maybe you can't. And if you can't, that's okay too. That's honest too. That's recognizing your own limits and choosing survival over enlightenment, over truth, over whatever this is that I'm living. Can you afford it? Do you even want to? What would you lose if you stop believing? And would what you gain be worth what you'd lose? Camus said, "The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world." And that confrontation, that constant pushing against silence and getting silence back, that's where we live now. Those of us who've admitted it, those of us who've paid the cost, we live in the confrontation, in the gap between needing and not receiving, between asking and not getting answers, between building and knowing the building doesn't matter. That's our home now, not comfortable, not stable, but ours. And living there requires something most people don't have or don't want. It requires saying yes to the absurd, not once, every day, every moment, constantly re-accepting that life has no inherent meaning, and that's okay. That you'll push your boulder anyway, that you'll get up and do things even though the things don't matter. That you'll continue for no reason except that you're continuing. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart, Camus wrote. And I've been thinking about that constantly, about whether struggle without purpose can actually fill anything, whether motion without destination can satisfy, whether pushing the boulder is actually enough, or if that's just what Camus needed to believe to keep pushing his own boulder. And I don't know. Some days I think he's right. Think the struggle is enough. Think the continuing despite meaninglessness is its own kind of meaning, even though I know that's contradictory. Think maybe I can be Sisyphus happy, pushing my absurd life up my absurd mountain and finding something like peace in the pushing. Other days I think he was lying. Think he needed to believe Sisyphus was happy, because believing otherwise would mean admitting the absurd leads only to suffering without redemption. Think maybe Sisyphus isn't happy. Maybe he's just continuing because stopping isn't an option. Maybe the smile is a grimace we interpret generously. But whether Sisyphus is happy or not, whether the struggle fills the heart or just fills time, we're still here, still pushing, still living in the confrontation between human need and cosmic silence, still admitting the absurd every morning and choosing to continue anyway. And that choice, that daily re-acceptance, that's the answer, not to the question of meaning. There is no answer to that question. The universe is silent, will always be silent. The answer is to the question of what you do after you admit there's no answer. And what you do is live anyway. You live knowing nothing you do will matter in any cosmic sense. Knowing your achievements will be forgotten, knowing your suffering is random, knowing your death is final. You know all of it, and you live anyway. Not because living means something, because living is what you're doing until you're not doing it anymore. That's the cost, that's the gain, that's the terrible freedom and the unbearable lightness and the permanent exile and the inability to comfort people with lies, and all of it. All of it is what you get for admitting the absurd. All of it is what you pay. All of it is what you live with. I'm sitting on this porch. Same porch I've sat on hundreds of times, watching this field. Same field I've watched grow and die and grow again. And I don't know if I'm Sisyphus happy. Don't know if I've accepted the absurd or if I'm still fighting it. Don't know if the cost was worth paying or if I had a choice. But I'm here, still pushing, still continuing, and the field is still being a field. And the grass is still growing without purpose. And the wind is still blowing without meaning, and all of it is absurd, and all of it is enough. Or if it's not enough, it's what there is. And what there is we'll have to do, because the alternative is stopping, and I'm not ready to stop, not yet, maybe not ever. Maybe I'll push my boulder until my body fails. Maybe that's what Sisyphus does, what we all do. Push until we can't, continue until we don't, live until we're dead. And none of it will mean anything. And that's okay. Or if it's not okay, it's true. And truth is what we're living with now. The cost of admitting life is absurd, is everything, is exile from meaning, is loneliness and lightness and terrible freedom, is losing narratives and relationships and the ability to comfort yourself with purpose. And what you get in return is honesty, is clarity, is the strange peace that might come from acceptance if you can reach it, is the ability to be present without needing presence to mean something, is Sisyphus's smile if you can find it. I don't know if that's a fair trade. Don't know if anyone should pay this cost. Don't know if admitting the absurd is enlightenment or just another form of suffering. But I know I've paid it, and I'm living with what I've paid for. And it's terrible, and it's freeing, and it's honest, and it's unbearable, and it's enough. Or if it's not enough, it's what I've got. And I'll keep pushing anyway. Because that's what Sisyphus does. That's what the grass does. That's what we all do who've admitted the absurd and decided to continue. We push, we grow, we blow, we exist, without meaning, without purpose, without justification, just being what we are until we're not anymore. And maybe, on the good days, we smile. Not because it's happy, because it's honest, because we've said yes to the absurd, and the yes, impossible and unbearable as it is all we've got. So that's the cost. That's what it takes to admit life is absurd, everything and nothing, both at once. Exile from meaning and freedom from needing meaning. Loss of community and gain of honesty. The terrible lightness and the strange peace. All of it. If this landed, if you felt the weight of the absurd while I was talking about it, subscribe to Raw Existence. We're not here to make you feel better. We're here to tell the truth. And the truth is that life doesn't make sense, never will. And you have to decide if you can live with that or if you need to keep pretending it does. Like this video, if you've admitted the absurd. If you've paid the cost, if you're living in the confrontation between human need and cosmic silence, if you're pushing your boulder and trying to figure out if the pushing is enough. And comment below. Tell me what it cost you. Tell me what you've lost by seeing clearly. Tell me if you found Sisyphus's smile or if you're still looking for it. Tell me if you think acceptance is possible or if we're all just continuing out of habit. I want to know. I read every comment. We're all pushing our boulders alone, but we're pushing them together in some strange way. Thanks for being here for 40 minutes. For sitting with the uncomfortable truth that nothing you do matters and you have to do it anyway, for admitting the absurd with me, for continuing despite knowing there's no reason to continue. See you in the next one, or not. Either way, the field will still be here, the grass will still grow, the boulder will still need pushing, and we'll still be doing it. Because that's what we do. One must imagine us happy, or if not happy, at least honest. And honesty, terrible as it is worth more than comfortable lies. Keep pushing.